The community center smelled like decades of potluck dinners, casserole steam, floor wax, and the faint metallic tang of folding chairs that had outlived their warranty. Maya Torres stood in the doorway, letting her eyes adjust to the amber light filtering through dusty windows. She hadn't been back to Riverside in 6 years. The town looked smaller, like someone had pulled the edges inward while she wasn't watching. Inside, veterans clustered in pressed khakis and polo shirts bearing unit patches faded by time and washing machines. Their wives fanned themselves with paper programs, complaining about the ancient air conditioning that wheezed but never quite delivered. Children wove between tables, their laughter high and careless, the kind of sound that only exists when you don't yet know what silence costs. Maya recognized faces: Mr. Patterson from the hardware store, now walking with a cane, Mrs. Chen, who'd taught her algebra and patience in equal measure, the Kowalski brothers, both grayer, both still finishing each other's sentences. They nodded at her, warm but tentative, the way people greet someone who left and became a stranger in the leaving. Her father stood near the makeshift stage, ramrod straight in a crisp button-down that still bore the creases from its package. Colonel David Torres, retired, decorated, respected. His silver hair was military short, his jaw set in that permanent line between authority and disapproval. He'd always known how to command a room, not through volume, but through the sheer gravitational pull of certainty. Their eyes met across the crowded hall. No wave, no smile. Just acknowledgement, the kind you'd give a subordinate whose name you couldn't quite remember. Maya had driven 8 hours for this. A simple reunion, the invitation said. Old friends, good food, a chance to honor those who served. She'd debated for weeks before finally deciding that avoidance was just another form of surrender. She'd faced worse rooms than this one. Darker places where the consequences of failure weren't embarrassment but blood. She moved toward the refreshment table, needing something to do with her hands. The lemonade was too sweet, the ice already melting into sad crescents. Behind her, conversations hummed, stories about grandchildren, retirement, medications, the stubborn persistence of living long enough to watch the world become unrecognizable. Maya Torres, is that really you? She turned to find Sarah Brandt, who'd been her lab partner in high school chemistry. Sarah's face had softened with age, smile lines mapping years of easier laughter than Maya had known. Sarah, God, how long has it been? Too long. You look. Sarah paused, searching for the right word. Fit, really fit. Are you still? I heard you joined the military? Still in, Maya said, offering nothing more. The details of her work weren't for rooms like this, weren't for people who thought service meant parades and ribbons. Your father must be so proud. The sentence landed like a stone in still water. Maya's smile didn't waver, but something behind her eyes went still. He has his opinions. Before Sarah could probe further, a microphone squealed to life. Mayor Hendricks, older, rounder, but still wearing the same optimistic smile he'd had when Maya was in middle school, tapped the mic twice. All right, folks, let's settle in. We've got some wonderful people to honor tonight, and I know Ruth's been guarding that peach cobbler like it's state secrets, so the sooner we get through the program, the sooner we eat. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Chairs scraped. People found seats in loose family constellations. Maya stayed near the back, one shoulder against the wall, exit routes mapped automatically, a habit that had kept her breathing in places where walls weren't always friendly. Her father was called up first, of course. He moved with the deliberate grace of a man who'd spent decades teaching his body to telegraph confidence. The mayor read from notes, voice warm with genuine admiration. Colonel David Torres served 30 years with distinction. 2 tours in the Gulf, decorated for valor, a leader who trained hundreds of soldiers in the art of discipline and honor. He's been the backbone of our VFW chapter, a mentor to young men seeking direction, and a reminder of what service truly means. Applause filled the hall, genuine and sustained. Her father nodded, accepting it the way he'd probably accepted every commendation, graciously, but as if it were simply his due. I won't take up too much of your time, he said, voice carrying effortlessly to the back row. That command voice, the one that never needed to rise to be heard. Service isn't about glory, it's about sacrifice. It's about putting something bigger than yourself first. It's about legacy. His eyes swept the room and found Maya. Held her there, pinned like a specimen. Legacy, he repeated, and the word felt weighted, aimed. Some understand that. Some. He paused, and in that pause, the room leaned forward. Some never quite grasp what it means to carry a name forward with honor. Maya's pulse stayed steady. She'd been under fire, literal fire, and kept her breathing even. This was just a different kind of combat, one she'd been training for since childhood. All she's done, her father continued, voice dropping into something colder, more personal, is disappoint me. The hall went silent, not the comfortable quiet of listening, but the terrible hush of witnesses to something that shouldn't be public. Heads turned, seeking the target of that statement. Sarah, sitting 3 rows up, looked back at Maya with wide, horrified eyes. Maya's face remained composed, but every muscle in her body locked down, holding position against the impact. This was what he did, what he'd always done. Found the audience, found the moment, and delivered the lesson he believed she needed to learn. Before anyone could react, before the mayor could salvage the moment with nervous laughter or a subject change, her father's hand landed on the shoulder of a younger man sitting in the front row. Broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, hair cut high and tight. The posture alone marked him military. This, her father said, voice warming with pride that had never, not once, been directed at Maya, this is Lieutenant Marcus Webb. Navy SEAL. Now here's a service member who understands what excellence looks like. What real dedication means. The room exhaled, grateful for the redirect. Murmurs of appreciation, heads nodding. The young lieutenant looked uncomfortable with the attention, but he stood when prompted, accepting the mantle of example, the child her father had always wanted. Maya should have looked away. Should have let the moment pass, swallowed it like she'd swallowed every other slight, every other disappointment she'd apparently embodied just by existing. But then Lieutenant Webb's eyes found hers across the crowded room. His expression changed. The polite smile froze. Color drained from his face as if someone had opened a valve. His lips parted, and Maya watched his throat work around words that seemed to stick on the way up. "Sir," he said, voice rough, pulling his shoulder free from her father's grip. He wasn't looking at the colonel anymore. He was staring at Maya like she'd stepped out of a myth he'd only half believed. "Are you?" Webb's voice cracked, steadied. "Are you the widow?" The question dropped into the silence like a depth charge. Maya didn't move, didn't confirm, didn't deny. Just held his gaze while the room began to recalibrate, puzzle pieces shifting into a picture her father had never seen. "The widow of Coronado," Webb whispered, and now his voice carried something close to reverence. "Jesus Christ. You're her." Her father's confident expression faltered. Confusion flickered behind his eyes, the look of a man realizing he'd misread the terrain. And Maya, standing in the back of that small town hall, felt the first stirring of something she hadn't allowed herself in years. Not vindication, not yet, but the possibility of it. To understand what happened in that hall, you had to go back. Back to a house on Elmwood Street where the grass was always regulation height and the flagpole never went bare. Back to a childhood measured not in birthday parties and scraped knees, but in inspections passed and expectations missed. Maya's first memory was of standing at attention. She was 6, maybe 7. Her father had come home from deployment with a duffel that smelled like sand and diesel, and before he'd even kissed her mother, he'd called Maya into the living room. "Stand here," he'd said, positioning her in the center of the rug. Heels together, back straight, chin level. She'd stood there for what felt like hours while he unpacked, while her mother made coffee, while the afternoon light shifted from gold to gray. When he finally nodded his approval, she'd nearly collapsed with relief. "Good discipline starts early," he'd told her mother that night at dinner, as if Maya weren't sitting right there. "She needs structure. She needs to understand that excellence isn't negotiable." Their home operated on military time and military precision. Breakfast at 0630. School bus at 0745. Homework completed before 1800. Dinner at exactly 1830, the table set with geometrical precision, fork on the left, knife and spoon on the right, water glass at 2 o'clock. Bedtime at 20:30, not a minute later. Her father inspected her room every Saturday morning. Bed made with hospital corners, drawers organized by category and color, shoes lined up with toes exactly 2 inches from the wall. The first time Maya failed inspection, a wrinkle in her bedspread, barely visible, he'd stripped the entire bed and made her remake it 6 times until it passed. She was 9. Mediocrity, he'd said, watching her struggle with sheets that seemed determined to betray her, is a choice. You choose excellence or you choose failure. There is no middle ground. Her mother, Claire, fought her own quieter war. She left notes in Maya's lunch bag, quotes from poets her father would have called soft. The question is not what you look at, but what you see. Thoreau, written in her mother's looping script. Maya kept them all in a shoebox under her bed, reading them when the house felt like it was running out of air. Claire taught literature at the community college, a job her father tolerated because it didn't interfere with his vision of domestic order. She read to Maya at night when he was deployed, Dickinson, Plath, Oliver, women who'd found ways to survive in worlds that wanted them smaller. Your father, she said once, when Maya was 12 and crying over a math test she'd gotten a 92 on, not good enough, never good enough. Your father believes love is discipline. He doesn't understand that sometimes it's just witnessing. Maya hadn't understood then. She did now. At 14, she'd made the mistake of bringing home a notice about the Naval Academy's summer seminar. For exceptional students interested in military service, the flyer read. She'd been first in her class, captain of the track team, leader of the debate club. On paper, she was exactly what they wanted. Her father had looked at the flyer for a long time, long enough that hope had started to build in Maya's chest, a dangerous, fragile thing. You're not strong enough, he'd said finally, handing it back. The academy is for warriors. Not girls playing dress up. But, no, the word had the finality of a door closing. You'll go to your mother's college. Study something practical, teaching maybe, or nursing. Something that suits your constitution. Maya had learned early that arguing only made the walls thicker. So she'd nodded, folded the flyer, and later that night, alone in her room, she'd applied anyway. Used her mother's college email. Forged his signature on the recommendation form. It was the first truly disobedient thing she'd ever done. Her mother had found her filling out the application at 2 a.m., hunched over the kitchen table with a mug of cold tea and a calculator for the financial aid sections. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down across from Maya and watched her daughter's hand cramp around the pen, determination carved into every line of her young face. You know he'll find out, Claire said finally. Maybe, but maybe I'll be gone by then. Her mother had smiled, sad and proud in equal measure. You have my spine. I always wondered if it would show up. I have his too, Maya said. The stubborn part. Then God help whoever gets in your way. The acceptance letter came in April of her senior year. Thin envelope first, just an acknowledgement. Maya hid it in her copy of The Awakening, a book her father had never touched. The thick envelope arrived 6 weeks later. We are pleased to offer, and Maya had stood in the driveway, holding it, feeling the weight of the future pressing against her ribs. She'd walked straight into his study. No knocking, no preamble. I got in, she'd said, holding out the envelope. He'd looked up from the expense reports he was reconciling. He kept the family books with the same precision he'd kept his platoons. Took the envelope. Read the first paragraph. You applied without permission. You would have said no. I'm saying no now. I'm 18 in 2 months. You can't stop me. Something had flickered across his face then, surprise, maybe, that she'd learned to hold her ground. Or disappointment that she'd chosen this particular ground to hold. You'll fail, he'd said, not cruel, just factual. You'll wash out in the first semester and come home humiliated. And I won't say I told you so, but we'll both know. Then I'll fail on my own terms. He'd handed the letter back. If you walk out that door to chase this fantasy, don't expect to walk back in when reality hits you. Maya had looked at her father, this man who'd taught her to stand straight, to endure, to never show weakness, and realized with sudden, terrible clarity that he'd only ever taught her how to be a good soldier. Never how to be his daughter. Understood, sir, she'd said, and left the study. Her mother drove her to the bus station on a Tuesday morning in July. They didn't tell him where they were going, just said Maya had an errand. The lie sat awkward between them, but necessary. At the station, Claire had held Maya's face between her hands. You're flying toward something, not away from it. Remember that when it gets hard. What if he's right? What if I can't? Then you'll have tried. That's already more than he ever let himself believe you could do. Maya had watched her mother drive away in the old Volvo, one hand waving out the window until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Then she'd picked up her duffel, packed with 3 changes of clothes, her mother's poetry notes, and enough determination to carry her across a continent, and boarded the bus heading east. She didn't cry until Maryland, when the landscape finally looked nothing like home. Plebes summer hit like a controlled demolition, everything Maya thought she knew about herself torn down to studs and foundation. The Chesapeake humidity turned the air into soup. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. The upperclassmen screamed louder. Faster, Torres. My grandmother moves faster and she's dead. Maya ran until running became a form of meditation. Until her body stopped asking permission and just moved. The first 2 weeks, she threw up after every morning PT. By week 3, she could hold down breakfast. By week 6, she could run the course and still have breath left to sound off. The academy didn't care about her father's name or his opinions. Here, everyone started at 0. You earned every inch of respect with sweat and precision. Maya learned to fold her uniforms so tight the creases could cut. Learned to spit shine boots until they reflected ceiling lights. Learned to recite reef points, forward and backward while doing push-ups. She learned that exhaustion was a state of mind, and mind was something you could train. Her roommate, Jessica Park, was from California, all easy confidence and surfer girl grace that belied a work ethic forged in immigrant parents' expectations. "My dad wants me to be a doctor," she'd said the first night, lying in the darkness. "I want to fly jets. Figure I'll do that first, then argue about medical school later." "My dad wants me to fail," Maya had replied. "So I can't. Then I guess we're both proving something." They became each other's calibration point. When Maya wanted to quit, and she did, 100 times that first year, Jessica reminded her why she'd started. When Jessica got homesick, Maya dragged her to the track and made her run until the loneliness couldn't keep pace. The men in their company ranged from dismissive to decent. Some made comments about quotas and lowered standards. Maya learned to let it slide off. She couldn't control their opinions. She could control her performance. So she outperformed, top of her class in navigation, second in weapons systems, first in strategic planning. She learned to think in layers, not just what the mission required, but what could go wrong and where the backup plans needed backup plans. Her professors called it operational paranoia. Maya called it survival. By sophomore year, she'd earned a quiet reputation. Not loud, not flashy, but solid. When group projects formed, people wanted Torres on their team. She made everyone around her sharper just by expecting more. She called home twice that first year. Both times, her mother answered. They talked about safe things, the weather, the neighbor's new dog, Maya's classes in vague terms. Her father was always busy or out. They both knew what that meant. "Does he ask about me?" Maya said once, hating how young her voice sounded. Silence on the other end, long enough that Maya could picture her mother in the kitchen, choosing words like weapons, which ones to keep holstered. "He reads your letters," Claire said finally. "The ones I make him read. He doesn't say anything, but he reads them." It wasn't much, but Maya learned to live on not much. She stopped calling, started writing letters she never sent, just to organize her thoughts. "Dear Dad, I ran 6 miles today. I didn't quit. Did you expect me to? Dear Dad, I led a navigation exercise. We didn't get lost. Does that surprise you?" She never mailed them, but writing them helped. Junior year, she declared her major, operations analysis. It was the perfect intersection of her strengths, strategic thinking, systems management, the ability to see patterns in chaos. Her advisor, a grizzled commander who'd spent 30 years in naval intelligence, pulled her aside after she filed the paperwork. "This track," he said, "puts you in rooms where wars are planned. Where lives are balanced on spreadsheets. You comfortable with that weight?" "More comfortable than pretending it doesn't exist," Maya said. He'd studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll do fine. You've got the spine for it." That summer, she interned at the Naval War College. Spent 3 months in rooms with maps on every wall, learning how admirals thought, how commanders made decisions when every option cost something. She was the youngest person in most meetings, the only woman in several. She learned to speak last and make it count. One afternoon, a captain presenting a mission brief got tangled in his own logistics, contradicting his timeline 3 times in 5 minutes. Maya waited until he finished, then raised her hand. "Sir, if I may, the fuel calculations assume a 12-hour window, but the weather window is only 8. Either we need more efficient routing or we need to adjust the departure time by 4 hours." Silence. The captain blinked at his own slides. "You're right. How did I miss that? Easy to lose the details when you're running the big picture, sir." After the meeting, the War College commandant stopped her in the hallway. "You plan on special operations, Torres?" "Haven't decided yet, sir. Decide soon. Teams need planners who can think 5 steps ahead. You've got the gift." The gift. As if seeing the cracks in plans before they shattered was something mystical, not just the result of growing up in a house where failure had consequences measured in weeks of silence. Senior year, she commissioned as an ensign. Her mother came to the ceremony, drove 9 hours alone and sat in the back row. Maya spotted her during the oath, saw her mother's hand pressed to her heart, tears streaming. Her father didn't come, sent a card instead, "Congratulations on your commission," signed with his full name, like she was a colleague, not his daughter. Maya pinned on her bars and told herself it didn't matter. She had a new family now. The Navy. Her brothers and sisters in uniform. People who judged her on what she could do, not what she'd failed to be. She was assigned to Naval Special Warfare Command. Not as a SEAL, that pipeline was still closed to women, but as an operations officer. She'd be the one planning the missions, managing logistics, building the maps that kept people alive. You'll be in Coronado, her detailer said. Working with some of the best operators in the world. They'll eat you alive if you're not prepared. Good thing I'm prepared, sir. They don't like outsiders. Especially not, he caught himself. Women? Maya finished. Yeah, I've heard. I'll manage. And she did. Because she'd been managing rooms full of men who underestimated her since she was 6 years old, standing at attention on kitchen linoleum, learning that the only opinion that mattered was the one you had of yourself. Coronado smelled like salt and possibility. Maya arrived in January, when the Pacific was cold enough to remind you it could kill you, warm enough that men still ran into it laughing. She checked into her quarters, a small apartment off base, close enough to hear the morning PT cadence drifting through her windows, and spent the first week just watching. SEAL teams operated differently than the regular Navy. Hierarchy existed, but it was earned, not assumed. Ranks mattered less than competence. The men moved with economy, no wasted motion, no wasted words. They'd been burned down and rebuilt so many times that what remained was pure function. Maya's job was to be the brain they could trust when theirs were running on fumes and adrenaline. Mission planning, logistics, intelligence synthesis. She built the scaffolding. They executed. The first time she walked into the operations center, conversation stopped. 20 pairs of eyes tracked her, measuring, dismissing, waiting for her to prove she didn't belong. Ma'am, the senior chief said, voice neutral. We weren't expecting you until Monday. Got here early, Master Chief. Wanted to see the space before the brief. She didn't wait for permission. Just moved to the large table covered in maps and satellite photos, studied the layout, noted the dated imagery, the conflicting intelligence reports that hadn't been reconciled. This target package, she said, pointing to a compound marked in red. The last ISR pass was 3 weeks ago. Has anyone requested updated imagery? Silence. Then, Intel said it was low priority. Intel's not putting boots on the ground. You are. She looked up, meeting the senior chief's eyes. I'll have updated photos by tomorrow morning. Anything else that needs unfucking before I start? Someone in the back snorted, suppressed laughter. The senior chief's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed. We're good, ma'am. Welcome to the team. She learned their language. They didn't want polish or formality. They wanted someone who could look at a plan, find the hole, and fix it before it became a body bag. Maya gave them that. She ran the morning brief like a scalpel, clean, precise, no wasted time. She memorized their families, their quirks, who got quiet before a mission and who got loud. She learned that when Lieutenant Myers cracked his knuckles 3 times, he was nervous. That when Senior Chief Rodriguez said, sounds good, he actually meant, that's a shit plan but I'm too polite to say so. That when the new guys got too confident, you added an extra contingency because confidence made you sloppy. Torres has a sixth sense, Myers said one night at the bar after a training evolution that had gone sideways in all the predicted ways. She sees around corners. It's not a sixth sense, Maya corrected. It's just pattern recognition. You all telegraph your concerns. I listen. See? She's doing it right now. Reading us like we're picture books. They started calling her, the analyst, respectful, but distant. She was good at her job, but she wasn't one of them. Couldn't be. The pipeline that forged SEALs wasn't open to her, and they all knew it. Then Fallujah happened. The operation was supposed to be simple. Locate and extract a high-value target before he could slip across the Syrian border. Intelligence had him in a compound in the old city, narrow streets, high walls, a maze that had swallowed armies before. Maya spent 3 days building the plan. Studied maps until she could navigate the streets with her eyes closed. Interviewed locals who'd escaped the city. Ran scenarios until her team could execute them drunk and blindfolded. You've got 3 routes in, she told them at the final brief. Primary takes you through the market district, most concealed, but slowest. Secondary uses the river access, fast, but exposed for 30 seconds at the bridge. Tertiary is straight down Highway 10, loud and obvious, but it's the one he won't expect. Which one do you like? Rodriguez asked. Depends on what he knows. If he's tracking our pattern, tertiary. If he's paranoid, secondary. If he's comfortable, primary. So which one, Torres? She looked at the map, at the compound marked in red, at the 3 colored lines representing 3 possible futures. Primary. He's comfortable. He's been in that compound for 2 weeks and no one's touched him. He thinks he's safe. And if you're wrong, then we abort and try again tomorrow. This isn't a one-shot deal. It should have worked. The plan was sound, the intelligence was good, and the team executed perfectly. But intelligence is always a best guess, and that night, the guess was wrong. The target wasn't comfortable, he was paranoid, and he had a spotter on the Market District roof who saw them coming. Maya was in the operations center, monitoring feeds, when everything fell apart. Contact, contact, we're compromised, they're moving the package. Her heart rate spiked, then settled. Training took over. All call signs, this is Overwatch. Shift to secondary route, mark now. Package is mobile, heading northwest toward the river. Reaper 3, can you cut them off at the bridge? Negative, we're pinned. Then go to tertiary. Highway 10, fast and loud. He won't expect it if he thinks you're still trying stealth. 3 seconds of silence that felt like hours. Then, roger that. Moving to tertiary. She watched the feeds, tracked the team's movements on the map with a grease pencil that left dark smears on her fingers. The target's vehicle was faster, but they had to navigate streets. Her team had a straight shot. Reaper 1, you've got a choke point at the intersection in 300 meters. He has to slow down for the turn. That's your window. Copy. 300 meters. Maya watched the distances collapse. Watched her plan, the one she'd marked as lowest probability, become the only thing between success and a target disappearing into Syria. 100 meters. 50. Mark, mark, mark. The feed went static, then cleared. The target vehicle stopped. Doors opening. Hands up. Clean capture, 0 shots fired. Package secure. Rodriguez's voice, slightly breathless. Returning to base. Maya set down the grease pencil. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table and breathed until they steadied. When the team came back, Rodriguez found her in the operations center, updating the after-action report. He dropped into the chair beside her and said nothing for a long moment. You saved it, he finally said. That operation was fucked 6 ways from Sunday, and you just, UNF.